Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to take my running race car apart and do some upgrades to get our compressed air turbo turbine spooling assist, something needs a better name, system on the car. So I'm about to show you all the parts, but here's our hot side setup before we take it apart. You'll see on the primaries I've already marked where I'm planning on putting the, 3/8 NPT bungs. So basically each runner is going to have its own. I marked them in a place where there's a lot of top access, like right here there's a lot of stuff going on, but right there isn't. So you can still get to all the bolts and nuts to take the manifold on and off. Anyway, that's where that's going to go. Here's our pieces. So I got some plugs threaded in. That way when I weld them, hopefully we don't warp the threads. You can still thread this in and out. I've made that mistake before. These help. So I got plugs in those. And let me show you some of the parts we're going to be using. I got most of it on this table. So naturally when you build a system like this, you're always going to order the wrong fittings or forget to order a fitting. So we got more fittings that'll be here tomorrow or the next day. These are 1/2" NPT and they go to 3/8 tube, or it's 1/2" or 3/8 compression, but a 3/8 tube goes in that. Here's some of the tubing. This is 3/8 OD. Stainless tube. We got another piece as well, so we got 24 feet of that. Should be plenty. The fittings we forgot. So these are 1/2 NPT, but on the manifold it's going to be 3/8 NPT, which is these bungs. But we forgot to order the correct compression fitting, so that's the one we're missing. These are 1/2 NPT to 1/2" hose. These are 1/2" NPT Y fittings. So we're probably going to at least possibly do something like that. So you'll have like one go in and then boom, boom. We'll see. I kind of want to do something different, but I already bought this. Maybe I'll just use it. I'll save that for a second. Here's our gauge. That's going to go on our tank. Looks different than the listing, but should work. Here's our solenoid. It's kind of heavy, but oh well. Solid brass. This side looks fairly high flow. When you look in here, that's okay. Anyway, we'll see. It's supposed to be good to 250 psi, so that's nice. What else? There's some pieces in case we need them. We got these. We're going to put one of those on our air tank so we can fill it. Speaking of the air tank, check this out. So this is a 5-gallon tank, and there's no welds. This is a seamless tank. So they basically just take like a tube of aluminum, and they use rollers to physically like bend the metal into shape. So it's all just one piece. It's kind of funny. Look how thick this is. It's like if you go here where the threads are, I mean, there's a lot of metal in there. I had no idea this thing would be that beefy. That's actually impressive. So, cool stuff. These are rated for 250 psi, but I mean, it looks like it would hold way more than that. But we're only going to run 225 right now, so that'll be good. We did get a relief valve for the tank. I don't know if we need it. It just seems like a safety thing. Like, you know, why not put a relief valve? Yeah, here it is. So that's a 250 psi relief valve in case we need it. Anyway, those are the parts. Oh, here's our hose. Yep, we bought this. This is 1/2" hose. It's even got the right. I just threaded that on there. This will go right into our tank, which is cool. So anyway, that's our parts. Now I got to take apart my running car and get this manifold modified. I guess I'm looking forward to the system being working, but I hate taking my car apart. So the goal is we're going to rip all this apart, get this. Like I said, I don't have the right fittings to go into the bungs, but either way, the goal is to get this off, weld those, get all that done, and put us all back together today or tomorrow. All right, let's get to it. All right, guys. So it's probably been about, let's just say 3 or 4 hours. I keep looking at stuff. I basically started doing engineering and trying to consider all the possible things. So our plan is to run the air in here, have one pipe for each runner. Thermodynamically, I believe that's a benefit. It'll capture heat from the tubes. Anyway, in theory, I think it would be better. But in practice, it's not as straightforward to implement. Also, I don't have the fittings yet. But anyway, these 4 tubes that go here have to go somewhere. Now, if they go back around here, you're in the firewall area. There's a downpipe, there's heat. Heat kind of flows that direction. So it's going to be hot. I also have a dipstick back there. And it sucks working around the firewall. One of the things I did when I did all this work on the car. If you come back here, look at this. I can shove my hand in here, and I got big fat hands. I'd moved everything away from there. It's just empty, other than like a coolant reroute. But even that, I tried to minimize the space it took up. And I really don't want to put stuff there. I like that being open. You can go up, but there's not much room here. And we have this bracket's here, and this breather's here. This piece goes across there, and my downpipe kicks a little here. You could go vertical, and of course you still got a dipstick there. But even if you go vertical, you still got to go this way, this way, or this way at some point. And there's still stuff in the way. If you try to come forward, this whole thing is in the way. Eventually this is in the way, although you could maybe come through here and then duck down. But we do have a coolant hose that goes to our turbo right here, which maybe that could get moved, but it's currently occupying that space too. And this pipe's kind of close. And we might want to change turbos one day. Just something to keep in mind. Anyway, I keep looking at this, and I've thought of a few different ways to implement it. So the plan, you know, they say you always have a plan, was to put these in there. And then here's the tubing. This is my 3/8 tube. So I'm worried about, basically this is going to turn into like an ugly, bulky mess. Even though I kind of knew that, but I was hoping I could do like a pretty simple, clean install. But as usual, I don't have a lot of space, which means this is going to have to be like fairly well thought out to turn out decent. So I found this piece. I thought about, what if we do this kind of like a fuel rail, like basically run like a tube across, and then, so for example, imagine above the runners, like in this area, another pipe running, and then having short pipes that go from it down to the header. So it'd basically be like putting a manifold on my manifold. And then you would blow air into the big tube, and then the 4 little pipes would blow it into the header. Kind of seems like it would be cleaner. Like it might be hard to package, but then again, if you did package it, I could imagine, for example, the beginning of the tube being right here, and then it just occupying space right there. So it would kind of package, and you could probably build this in a way you can get to the nuts on the manifold. It could be welded to the manifold, so it'd be kind of rigid. There are some thermal concerns because there's a large gradient in temperature. This is bolted to the head, so it's got good thermal conductivity because the head is aluminum and is water cooled. So from here going this way, things get really hot really fast. Once you get past this flange, it starts to get hot really quick. So there's going to be some thermal stresses. And vibration obviously is bolted to an engine. I've done thin pipes with not good success on this car, so I'm a little hesitant to weld pipes to it. I could just see that fatiguing and cracking. And even though I want this for performance, I really don't want to deal with the reliability, like a liability in reliability. That's a funny phrase. So anyway, here I am rambling for like 4 minutes, and like I said, I've been looking at this for probably 4 hours trying to figure out a good way to do it. So, let's look at what's obvious. Let me get the camera just right. No, it's hard to film. Maybe I can get it right there. There we go. So that's where the pipes go into the collector. And right here would be fairly straightforward to drill a hole and just hook a pipe here. And that's the equivalent of what my buddy did. Now I don't think this is as good from an efficiency standpoint. I think your net, like the average temperature of the gases going in the turbine, will be colder if I do that. But what it does do is it's simple. And if you look here where my hand is, I can put my fist in here. There's a lot of room to work there. Nothing's really occupying that space. So, like hands down, it's simpler. Potentially, I still got to think about this, but potentially I could just weld a tube there, and then at the end of the tube hook a hose to it. Now the tube's going to have to be kind of long enough that it cools off enough that my hose hooking to it doesn't like catch on fire or get heat damaged. Still trying to figure that part out, but generally speaking, there's a lot more room there. Now let me add the last piece of the combination as to why I might do that. So me and my buddy have gone back and forth on this. There's, to me, the engineering background, I think injecting the air closer to the head and allowing it to capture heat from the manifold is going to be more efficient. By efficient, I mean how much spool I can get out of the turbo per amount of air consumed. So I think in that regard, it's more efficient. But what he mentions is that on his setup, he's got something kind of like what I just mentioned, where it blows right into the neck of the turbo, in the turbine. He thinks that the momentum of that air is kind of causing like a ram effect. It would probably, I don't know about that. Now there is something to that, like on turbos, like generally OEMs keep their turbos as close to the head as possible. In fact, a lot of cars, some cars have gotten rid of exhaust manifolds and the turbo actually bolts to the head. And the thinking there is that you get that little pulse of energy, hits the turbine and impinges on the wheel. It's like pow. Instead of like smooth flow, it's more impactful. So it's like, it is more efficient per like that pulse of energy. So there is something to that. I don't know. I don't know if that's really that big a deal, but then again, I don't know about the stuff in the top. So my point is, I think I might try both. I kind of want to try both just to see which one's actually better. But if I had to pick one, I'd rather do the 4Runners because I think that one's better, but it's way harder to implement. And I keep going back and forth. I haven't decided like a good way of doing it yet. So what I'm thinking is I'm about to rip all this apart, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a single pipe right there and just hook that up and go with it. It's not my first choice. I guess it's my second choice, but still, my buddy uses it with great success, and it would be a lot and this setup is like probably 10 times easier to implement and certainly more reliable. For one, it's only one connection, not four, but it's more reliable than just that. So I think that's what we're going to do. Part of the reason is to get moving, because I've been sitting here for hours, and I sat down a minute ago and I was like, all right, let's make a decision. Which one are we going to do? And I kind of went through the options, and I still can't make up my mind. And I was like, all right, well, I'm tired of doing nothing. Let's do something. Learned that from my boss at work. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to rip this thing apart. We're going to mark that. But we're going to take it apart and just install a single pipe. The only question now, because I wasn't planning on doing it this way, is what size pipe. I have some half-inch tubing, but tubing is OD, not ID, so half-inch tube is going to be less than half-inch ID, which is smaller than I wanted. But it's what I have. So I got to look and see if I have like 3/4 tube. But I don't think I do. So I'm going to look around, and if I can't find anything, we're probably going to use that. So that's our update. Now we got to get some work done. All right, check it out. So we've been working for a while, and we got it back together. So down here, we've got a barb. So it's got a pretty good distance. I think that's actually enough. We can just stick a hose, worst case a high temp hose, and it'll be okay. We'll see. Maybe I have to brace it, but I kind of think it's going to work. Anyway, we got that hooked up, and then basically everything's put back together. We got our oil hose repaired. That was this guy. As you can see, we heat insulated all the things that are near the turbo. So it looks better, and it should be more reliable, which both of those are welcome. Here's the hood. We cut that piece out, which is over there now. Got rid of that. That's what was touching here, and it cut our hose over here. Not that. Anyway, that piece is all trimmed, so hopefully we're good to go. Anyway, kind of wraps this up. We got our downpipe on. We just got to do the turn down at the bottom, and then we got to continue on with like hooking up the hose, the solenoid, and all that stuff. So let's work on that. All right, guys. So we actually just finished building all this. Time to film it. So here's our tank. So this is a 5-gallon spun tank. So there's no seams, no welds. It's just one pipe, and they basically use like a roller while it's spinning to form the ends. So it's rated to 250 psi, and it looks pretty strong. We've got a relief valve in the bottom, and there's actually another port in the bottom, and I could use that to drain it, but I may just be able to pull that to drain it. We got a female air chuck, and I've got a way to fill that, which is this guy. This is a male-to-male ball valve. So basically I shut the valve, click it into my air hose, click it into the tank, open the valve to fill it. Once it's full, shut the valve, and then click, click, take it apart. Pretty straightforward, but that keeps the weight off the car. There's our air hose that goes to the front. There's some more plugs in the top and a plug on the end. So she's just got some brackets, and it's bolted to this rear firewall. Pretty straightforward. So this hose shoots over the subframe and this gap that now exists. Once you get under the car, you can see it right here. Gotta fix that. That's probably an issue. I think we had found something else we needed to fix too. I don't remember what it was. This runs through there, down over to the front. Oh yeah, this is what it was. So this, the tire could hit this. I gotta do something about that. But anyway, here's our air hose. We left a little slack in case we ever need to redo this hose end, because I don't want to replace like 10 or 12 feet of hose. Here's our solenoid. So this is a 1/2 inch solenoid. We may upsize it down the road, but honestly, doing some pressure calcs, I think the 1/2 inch hose is probably the limiting factor, not the valve, because of the length of hose. Here's our simple little bracket, and then here you can see the hose goes to the manifold. So if I kind of film it from this angle, it's pretty easy to see the whole system, or at least the front section. Pretty straightforward. And if you look here, you can tell that just shoots right into the turbo. That's a nice view showing how that works. Maybe. Yeah, there you go. So, pretty straightforward, but there it is. That's implemented. And you can see we got some wires going here. We just got this wired up. It's real straightforward. For those of you that are curious, this is dirt simple. So, take our battery voltage, goes to our fuse panel. We got to pop a fuse in and label the switch. And that sends voltage to the solenoid. There's actually no D1. I was going to use a D1, but it turns out because I use this injector output, it has a diode that clamps anyway. So, should be good on that. And then, yeah, we're just using a gray connector number 8, which is injector out E. That's it. Dirt simple. We'll have the ECU, since we can control this. We can use sensor inputs and like throttle, boost level, you know, whatever. RPMs, whatever we want to trigger it. Technically, we could PWM it. Not sure how it would respond to that. May test that down the road, but for now, it's just going to be on-off. But yeah, how simple is that? We got our compressed air system set up. What's funny is, I just showed you the whole system in 3 minutes. It's really not that hard. I kind of make this harder than it really needs to be, trying to optimize things that maybe don't matter. But there she is nonetheless. It's hooked up. I gotta test this, so I'm about to lower the car, shoot a little bit of air in the tank, make sure there's no leaks, and then turn the car on, hook the laptop up, and fire it, and just make sure it actually works. We're not going to run very high pressure. I really just want to make sure the system's clicking, the solenoid's firing, air's moving, no leaks, just basic stuff. Our compressor, we still got to do something with this. We don't actually have the regulator only gives you like 150, not 225 PSI. So we got to solve that problem. We haven't done that yet, so that'll be very soon. But hey, we got this built. Let's see if it actually works. Okay, so just to show you that it works, we got it set up for the throttle. So if you hit the throttle all the way, it fires the solenoid. Granted, it's not running, but you'll at least hear it do something. Which it's a ball bearing turbo, so I think it'll be okay if it does spin a little bit. But anyway, we did 50 PSI and it works. Now we're at 100. Oh, let's see what happens. Let me jump in the car. I doubt we'll see any boost, but let's see what happens. Yeah, well, that's not surprising. It's just cold air, but it works. Drains the tank pretty fast. We only had it at 100. But anyway, it works. Nice. We finally did it. Well, the next test, of course, is to get the car running, get it warmed up. Well, I guess the next test is to put as much air as I can't really go over. So I use my shop compressor, which is way over there. That put it up to 100. My little compressor will go to 150. So we'll probably test like 100 and then 150. After that, we got to mod it to get higher pressures. But hey, it's working. That's cool. Making progress. All right, so we just got our high pressure air source hooked up. So this hose down here, it's hard to get a picture of, but that goes from the tank. That's what supplies the regulator, but it goes into this cross, and so your first gauge, this is your tank pressure. So we basically teed off of that, put our own tee. This valve used to be threaded in there. It used to go right here, so we just stuck a tee, hooked it back up. Now we got a quick connect that we can hook to tank pressure. So as you can see, those two are regulated, this one's unregulated. So this will be our high pressure source to air our tank up when we want to go to full pressure. Okay, this is trans brake, but no spool shot. Here we go. Okay, let it cool down a minute. Try it again. Okay, this time it'll have spool shot. Let's see what happens. This is 100 psi in the tank. Better, but not great. Okay, this will be spool shot, 140 psi air pressure. Okay, so this is 140 psi, but we're going to do 3 seconds of like half throttle before we hit the spool shot to see what difference it makes. Get a little bit of turbo speed up. Hey, that was better. Nice. Okay, tank pressure 225 psi. We're going to do about 3 seconds of half throttle on the trans brake, then hit the spool shot. Damn, that hit hard. Well, I'd say that works. Okay, just for the fun of it, let's try a second spool shot without topping it off. So we're at like 100 something, like maybe 140 psi or something. Same thing, 3 seconds, and then we'll floor it. Here, brake. That still works. Damn. Alright, YOLO, let's try a third time. I doubt this will work, but just for the hell of it. Actually, that kind of did work. Not very good, but it worked. Alright, so here's the hose. We just did 3 trans brake launches about 3 or 4 minutes ago. I can actually touch this. It's fucking hot. That's probably like 150, 180 degrees. Probably like 150. I can't hold my hand there very long, but I can touch it for like a half a second without a burn. So far, that's not enough heat to cause any damage. Alright, so let's check this out. So this is making a pull. So this was heating the car up, and no spool shot, just to see what it would do. You can see it took forever, but we did eventually get to 12 psi boost, about 5,000 RPMs. I did the data already, I'll show you all that in a second, but that took about 8.7 seconds from flooring it to 12 pounds of boost. Okay, so here's basically doing the same thing, but this was 100 psi of tank pressure. So as soon as I floored it, the tank thing fired. This isn't really the right way to use it because it wastes a lot of air, but it did work. You can see like immediately, as soon as you floor it, we start building boost, and it gets better, and then I'll let off. We only got to 10 pounds there. Granted, I let off. That's not how we plan to use it. Let's see, this one, I believe was doing the same thing, but it's 140 tank pressure. And same thing, it's spooled up, but that's not the right way to use it. The right way to use it is to give it some throttle to kind of like pre-spool the turbo, then hit it, which is what Marshall told me, and it makes a lot of sense. So here's doing that, and here you can see, boom, we got to full boost at 12 pounds of boost fairly quickly. I'm zooming way in. This over here is like 3 seconds of like half throttle, and it's spooled up. So let me show you the good stuff. Okay, so this is the best one. So this was a tank pressure 225 psi. So we gave it half throttle, and then right here we floored it. I'm gonna zoom in on this. So right here where we floored it, negative 0.1, basically 0 psi of boost. But we had been giving it some throttle, so we're actually sitting at 3100 RPM. So our converter had slipped its way up to 3100, but still no boost. But that's when the spool shot hit. One thing you'll note, this green line is called lambda error. So this is the between target and actual. The reason it skyrockets is because the air is spraying in the exhaust, which is making it seem like the motor's running lean, which it's really not, but O2 sensors measure oxygen. So when it sees all that air that has oxygen, it thinks the motor's lean. So you can also kind of see that as like a confirmation of when the air fired, and then here it kind of ramps down and stops. The ramping is probably just running out of air, but it shuts off at roughly 12 psi. Anyway, what you'll notice is as soon as the air hits, it starts to climb, 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 and it just builds its way up. And this, let me show you the data. Okay, check this out. So here's our data. So we did multiple tests, which we saw in the videos. So towards the end, we tested the full tank pressure. Then we hit it a second time to see what would happen. Then we hit it a third time. We don't really know what was in the tank. And then we also had tried no air at all. Now, for what it's worth, after we had fired the third shot, I checked and we still had about 40 pounds of air pressure. So when here we fired at 130, here we probably fired at like 80 or 70 or something, or whatever, I don't know, because it only had about 40 pounds left. But check this out. So when we had so let's look at this one, right? No spool shot, takes forever. I did the math 2 different ways. This is how long it actually took, but to be fair, I was giving the motor like half throttle for 3 seconds to kind of pre-spool the turbo, get some shaft RPMs up before the air hit. So if I subtract 3 seconds, you can see here, this gives us this is our boost rise rate. So this is how many PSI of boost per second that the motor's building. So just measuring it directly, 1.4 pounds per square inch per second. That's why it takes forever. At the drag strip, it was actually 1 PSI per second. It took 12 seconds to get 12 pounds of boost. Pretty terrible. But out here, I had the trans warmed up a little better, and it spooled a touch faster. Now, if we take off the 3 seconds, that gets us to 2 pounds per second. But that's still terribly slow. So you can see here, even when the tank had like crap for air in it, we were getting 4 pounds per second. So that's still double this number, and that was with hardly any air at all. So even a little bit of air actually does, I mean, that doubled my spool rate, and that was probably like 80 psi in the tank. Now, this one, so we did this one first, right? And it took out about 100 pounds of air, roughly. Went from 225 to 130. So when I fired this one, we were climbing at basically 9 psi per second, which is actually great. For a drag strip, this is good enough. I can basically stage, spool it. Hell, I could probably fully stage and then spool it. But anyway, this is a workable number. And this took 1.35 seconds to get to spool. Now, we're only targeting 12 pounds of boost. So if we're targeting, say, 30, it's going to take longer. But the thing is, once your turbo is already at a certain point, it just kind of spools on its own. You don't really need this system. So, like, to go to 30 psi isn't going to take much longer because the turbo is already cooking. And of course, here's the big stuff, what really counts. So 225. Look at this. We went from nothing to full boost in 3/4 of a second. That's awesome. 3/4 of a second. So that's climbing 16 pounds per second of boost. I'm pretty happy with that. Could we improve this? I mean, probably. I don't know. There's whatever. Who cares? This is good enough. This works. This is definitely... I can spool the turbo in less than a second. So my guess is that I could get up to 30 pounds. This number would probably be like 1.2 seconds. Maybe 1.25. Give another half second to go from 12, from say, this was a full boost of 12. But once it was at 12, if the gates had stayed shut, the turbo, I mean, everybody's seen this, like your turbo. I'll try to draw this, where your boost kind of goes, like this. it exponentially climbs. So we shut it off in here, but if we'd wanted to go higher, it wouldn't have taken very long to get there. So anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this up. This is probably a long video because I want to show you guys results, not just a bunch of work. But man, I'm pretty stoked with this. This is on the car, and it works. And I mean, obviously it works. Like, here's the system. Basically, here's no air. We're between 1.4 and 2 pounds per second, 1.4 to 2 psi per second. Now we're at 16 psi per second. So that's roughly, depending on how you look at it, that is over 10 times better, and this is still like 16 times better. Or no, this is 8 times better. This is like 10 times better. Yeah, 2 times 8 is 16, for those of you counting. So yeah, this is 8 to 10 times better having this system on the car. So it's definitely worthwhile. This was a big improvement. I expected it to be a big improvement because it was so bad without it. Because this thing has a large turbo, big turbine. You know, it's good for making power, but not good for spool. So now we can have our cake and eat it too. How about that? All right, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. Feel free to share this with your friends and tell people about it, because I bet you haven't seen this before. My buddy Marshall, me and him have talked about this for years. He's had it on his car for years. But nobody really does this. So shout out to Marshall and for giving me basically, I had thought of it and then he basically did it. So huge amount of encouragement and information came from him. So he gets a lot of credit. But yeah, this shit works. So hope you guys have enjoyed this, and until next time, y'all take it easy.